The second year I was married to Khloe, Julian Croft hired a group of men to disrupt my father's funeral. They stormed into the quiet hall, throwing buckets of paint that splattered across the memorial wreaths, setting off firecrackers that popped and echoed through the somber space, and hanging garish banners. To complete the spectacle, they blasted the song Celebration on a continuous loop from a portable speaker. All of this chaos was because I, Khloe's legal husband, was considered an inconvenience to him and the vocal online community that believed they belonged together. At that very moment, Khloe and Julian were in the middle of a promotional tour for their latest movie premiere. During a press event, a reporter in the audience posed a question about regrets in love. Khloe turned her gaze toward her co-star, remaining silent. Julian's eyes, however, seemed to sparkle under the stage lights as he delivered one of the film's most memorable lines with perfect timing. "I'd love to hold your hand, but your wedding ring, it digs into me." It was a perfectly crafted moment, and the message was clear. I was the obstacle, the stone blocking the path of their supposed true love. This time, however, I was finally ready to step aside and reclaim my own life. I was trying to do my best to greet the friends and family who had come to pay their respects when my phone buzzed with a call from Khloe's assistant. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice professionally apologetic. "Khloe asked me to tell you she's sorry. The studio insisted she attend the premiere tour at the very last minute. You know we can't afford to anger them. Please try to understand. I wondered if it was truly the studio that wanted her there, or if it was Julian." The line went quiet for a moment as I absorbed her words. I had no desire to hear any more excuses, so I simply ended the call. My agent, Mark, who was standing beside me, looked at me and let out a deep sigh. "I told you that woman was bad news, but you never wanted to listen. Just look at this mess." He patted my shoulder in a gesture of comfort. "Don't let it get to you. I'm here for you, man. I've got your back. Let's just focus on giving your dad a proper send-off today. Today was my father's funeral, and my wife, Khloe, was conspicuously absent. It wasn't just today, either. She had never once made an appearance at any significant event in my life, whether it was large or small. I had been the one pursuing her relentlessly from the time I was 18, until I turned 28. Even with our names, Ethan Vance and Khloe, printed side by side on our marriage certificate. To her, I was still less important than a stray dog. When the mob of young men crashed the service, I simply froze in place. A crowd of people began screaming for me to die, then started splashing bright red paint all over the floral arrangements and wreaths. The scene rapidly devolved into complete chaos. A tightness seized my chest, my head began to spin, and I nearly fainted from the sheer force of my rage. Mark grabbed me just in time, shouting at the people around us, "Call the cops! Somebody call the cops! These people are insane!" I managed to steady myself enough to dial 911, my voice shaking uncontrollably as I spoke to the dispatcher. I felt so profoundly wronged that I couldn't stop myself from calling Khloe. The phone rang once before she bluntly declined the call. For a brief second, I felt as if a part of me was dying. The world around me became a spinning, noisy blur, and I felt utterly and completely alone. By the time the police cars arrived, their sirens wailing, a bright red banner that read, "Congratulations on the death of Ethan Vance's father," was still hanging crookedly from a light fixture, and a speaker was still blasting that cheerful song on a loop. My dad's portrait was right there, in the center of the hall, a silent witness to the desecration. The chaos only subsided when the police managed to subdue the troublemakers. The man in charge of the group was a stranger to me, with bleached blonde hair and shifty, nervous eyes. I had never seen him before in my life. When the police demanded to know why he was causing such a scene, the man shot me a contemptuous, mocking smirk. "Just don't like the look of him," he said, pointing a lazy finger in my direction. "You could say I'm one of Mr. Vance's biggest haters." I forced myself to take a deep, calming breath. In the end, the group was taken away, charged with disturbing the peace. As the blond man was being pushed into the back of a police car, he suddenly turned and mouthed something directly at me. When I finally understood what he was saying, something inside of me snapped, and my heart sank into the pit of my stomach. The silent word was home wrecker. That had become my nickname online. I had been an actor for 8 years, but had never achieved major stardom. The day the news broke that I was married to Khloe, the haters seemed to materialize out of the woodwork overnight. Back then, the media was completely fixated on her on-screen romance with Julian. Their shippers, the dedicated fans who desperately wanted them to be a couple in real life, took over the social media hashtag about our marriage, flooding my accounts with tens of thousands of hateful and vicious comments. That was how I earned my infamous nickname. In their world, the prevailing rumor was that Khloe's one true love was Julian Croft. That narrative cast me as the unloved one, the other man who stood in their way. I always knew their fans were intense, but I had never imagined they would be crazy enough to crash my father's funeral and desecrate the memory of an innocent man. My dad had been a good person his entire life. He didn't deserve to be insulted and disrespected like this, simply because of my connection to Khloe. When he was alive, he had never approved of me trailing after her like a lost puppy. I used to just laugh it off, telling him that I was just being brave enough to chase after the love I wanted. I glanced over at my dad's portrait. The old man in the photo wore the same kind, gentle smile he always had. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Dad, I'm so sorry. It was pathetic that it took me 10 long years to finally understand that unrequited love isn't a form of courage. Being a doormat and letting someone walk all over you isn't courage either. After everything was finally cleaned up and all the guests had departed, only Mark remained by my side. He tossed his phone to me, his expression annoyed. Ethan, see for yourself. Your wife is trending on social media again. I was so emotionally exhausted that I didn't even have to look to know what it was about. It would be another hashtag celebrating her and Julian. Khloe, the award-winning actress, and Julian, the award-winning actor, were Hollywood's favorite on-screen couple. I opened the app, and countless fan-made video edits of them immediately populated my feed. In a clip from that day's premiere, they stood side by side on stage. A reporter carefully danced around the sensitive subject, asking them about their regrets in love. Julian's eyes twinkled as he smiled and delivered that classic line from their movie. I'd love to hold your hand, but your wedding ring, it digs into me. In an instant, the audience erupted in cheers and applause. The camera then panned to Khloe. She looked perfectly composed, meeting his gaze directly. But her hand, the one adorned with her wedding ring, was clenched tightly into a fist. The tension between them was palpable. They were barely holding it together, maintaining a fragile facade of professionalism for the cameras. I watched the video with a completely blank expression, a bitter laugh slowly building in my chest. A few years ago, a scene like this would have sent me into a jealous rage. We would have had a massive fight, and in the end, I would have been defeated by her signature silence and coldness, forced to pretend it never happened just to move on. I don't know why, but in that moment, a memory of our wedding day flashed through my mind. I remembered the feeling of putting the ring on her finger, telling her that she could never take it off. Not when she was eating, showering, or sleeping. Never. Her face had been cold and unreadable, but she had agreed without any hesitation. I won't, she had said. Like a fool, I thought that promise meant she loved me too, at least for that one fleeting second. But now, it was clear that our wedding ring had become the silver handcuff that was keeping her from her supposed true love. I scrolled down past the video to the comments section, where the shippers were in an absolute frenzy. OMG, does anyone see the look in Khloe's eyes? It's that I've already confessed my love in every glance I give you vibe. I'm crying, they're so perfect. They don't need to make it official, everyone just knows. Does anyone else feel like Khloe is living out her dreams through her movies? Julian is the leading man in every single one of her films. Replying to above, totally. They're both such classy people with high morals. They feel the love but keep it respectful. They can't be together in real life, so this is all they have. Then there was one stray comment that dared to challenge the narrative. Can't you guys just ship them in the movies? Shipping a married woman with someone else in real life is kinda weird. The replies were swift and unanimous in their condemnation. Ethan, log into your main account. Ooh, the morality police are here to judge us. So scary. Everyone was convinced that this public display was proof of their tragic, real-life love story. They were using the movie's script to publicly declare the love they couldn't otherwise express. Besides taking over the hashtag and their fan pages, the shippers had also left tens of thousands of comments on my own social media profiles. LMAO, so glad to see everyone is dragging you. You can't force love. So what if you managed to trap her into marriage? LOL. I was tired of reading it all. While Khloe was busy sharing the silver screen with Julian, their devoted fans were busy cyberbullying me and desecrating my father's funeral. I slipped the wedding ring off my finger and turned to Mark, my eyes dry but my voice cracking with emotion. I want a divorce. I was done being the third wheel in their epic, tragic love story. Mark stared at me for a second. Then a slow grin spread across his face. You finally come to your senses. He slammed his hand on the table, grinning. A divorce is the best thing you could do. It's what your dad would have wanted. Later that evening, when I got a call from Khloe's phone, I didn't expect Julian to be on the other end of the line. A clear, confident voice came through the receiver. Mr. Vance, Khloe's had a bit too much to drink. Could you come pick her up? I didn't have the energy to wonder how Julian knew Khloe's passcode. I just let out a bitter, humorless laugh. So I was supposed to host my father's funeral during the day, and then play the role of a designated driver for her at night? It suddenly hit me with stunning clarity just how much I had let her walk all over me for years. In the past, no matter how late it was, one call from one of her friends would have me rushing to carry a dead-drunk Khloe home from some party. But this was the first time Julian himself had ever called. Sure thing, send me the address, I said with a slight chuckle. Then I calmly hung up the phone and turned it off completely. I walked over to the window, opened it, and lit a cigarette. I took a deep drag, the cold night air filling my lungs along with the smoke. Khloe had always hated the smell of cigarettes. The first time I had ever smoked was 10 years ago. I was only 18 when my dad was suddenly diagnosed with lung cancer. Khloe and I had just started trying to make it as actors, and I borrowed money from everyone I knew. But it wasn't even a tenth of what we needed for his expensive medical bills. A fairly well-known director approached me then and said that money wasn't an issue, but on one condition. I had to sleep with one of the film's investors. He had this slimy, evil grin on his face when he said it, his eyes narrowed to slits. The thought alone almost made me throw up. I sat up all night in the hospital waiting room, just staring into space. The little boy in the next bed, whose father was also sick, offered me a cigarette. Before the sun came up, I figured if I just closed my eyes tightly, I could probably keep myself from puking. I would do anything to save my dad. So I borrowed a lighter from the kid, planning to smoke it and then go meet the investor. Just as I exhaled the first ring of smoke, Khloe showed up out of nowhere. She slapped the cigarette out of my mouth, her eyes colder than I had ever seen them. Then, She tossed a bank card at my feet. Khloe said she had been cast in a big production and had received an advance on her salary. She sneered, "You don't have to debase yourself now." And just like that, on that day, I fell head over heels in love with Khloe. It sounds weird, right? Considering how she had just insulted me. But in a strange way, it made sense. She had saved my dad, and in doing so, she had also saved me. It felt only natural that I would fall for her. After that day, I became her loyal dog. If she told me to go east, I would never dare to go west. She said the sight of me smoking made her sick to her stomach, so I never touched a cigarette again. Until this year, when my dad's lung cancer came back with a vengeance. I had plenty of money this time, lots of it. But it was useless. When I got the call that he was in critical condition, I lit a cigarette, and I couldn't stop. My thoughts returned to the present. The city lights flickered in the night, blurred by the white smoke I exhaled. A gust of cold wind made me shiver. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. All these years, the love, the hate, it all felt like a long, hazy dream I was finally waking up from. I was curled up on the living room sofa, lost in thought. At 2 a.m, the old grandfather clock in the hall chimed twice, and the front door suddenly opened. Khloe switched on the entryway light, and her eyes immediately landed on the glowing red tip of the cigarette between my fingers. All she did was frown slightly. "Can't sleep?" she asked. I didn't say anything. I didn't get up to greet her like I always used to, wrapping my arms around her waist and murmuring her name. Khloe pinched the bridge of her nose, looking utterly exhausted. She walked over to me. "I'm sorry I couldn't be at Dad's funeral," she began. "I'll go see him first thing in the morning." Khloe sat down beside me, smoothly took the cigarette from my hand, and stubbed it out in the ashtray. "I know you're hurting," she said, looking down at me. "But I didn't have a choice, Ethan." I ignored her apology and lit another cigarette. "Who brought you home?" She seemed taken aback by the question, freezing for a second. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. "Julian called me from your phone, said you were drunk and needed a ride. I didn't go, so who brought you home?" Khloe was silent for a long moment. "I didn't know he called you." I looked at her, and it was all so painfully clear. "A famous actor dropping a married actress home in the middle of the night," I said mockingly. "If a paparazzi caught that, your shippers would have a field day." "Ethan?" Her eyes went cold as she used my full name. "It's just a publicity stunt. He just gave me a ride because it was on his way." "Really? Then how did he unlock your phone? My wife's phone passcode. A secret to me, her legal husband, but known to her publicity stunt on-screen partner." She frowned. "I don't know." This time I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Then what do you know?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Do you know that your shippers trashed my dad's funeral today?" I didn't want to get hysterical like I used to, but in that moment, I realized just how much Khloe's coldness and distance over the years had finally gotten to me. She didn't even call me back after the premiere. She never even bothered to ask me what was wrong. I looked at her. My love. My wife. The flame I had been throwing myself into for 10 long years. A sharp pain shot through my heart. I squeezed my aching fist. "Khloe, we've dragged this out long enough. It's time to stop. Let's get a divorce. It's what you've always wanted. I'll set you free and I'll free myself." "What did you say?" Khloe's face instantly darkened. I felt a wave of profound exhaustion wash over me and didn't want to speak another word. She grabbed my arm, forcing me to look at her. Her cold eyes scanned my face, and she practically ground out the words, "Ethan Vance, I dare you to say that again." I almost laughed out loud at the irony. 10 years ago, on the day my dad was discharged from the hospital, Khloe showed up with a bouquet of flowers to pick us up. I had tentatively asked her if she wanted to go out with me. Her body had stiffened, and when she looked at me again, her eyes were filled with an icy contempt. "Ethan Vance, you've fallen for me just like that? You're so cheap." We had known each other since we were kids and had always rubbed each other the wrong way. I knew that her thin lips could spit out the cruelest, coldest words imaginable, so I didn't care. I shamelessly latched onto her. She had scoffed. "Ethan Vance, I can date you, but I will never love you, and I will certainly never marry you." Her tone was vicious and cruel. Anyone else would have probably given up right then and there, but I wasn't anyone else. So I watched as Khloe's career soared in the entertainment industry while I struggled, unable to keep up no matter how hard I tried. "My career is taking off right now. I can't go public with our relationship. If you can't accept that, you can get lost," she had informed me from her pedestal. I had just grinned. I can accept that. After all, my worst-case scenario was her dumping me. But she didn't, which was a pleasant surprise. This continued until we were secretly photographed. The pictures went viral, and our 8-year relationship was exposed to the world. Khloe, with her carefully crafted, perfect public image, saw her popularity plummet. Netizens accused her of being irresponsible for being in an 8-year relationship without making it official or getting married. My dad saw the articles and stormed over to Khloe's place, his face grim. "I'm putting my foot down. You two are breaking up. From now on, you have nothing to do with our family." She refused. So, as the next logical step, we proceeded to get married, and everyone was happy. Everyone, that is, except for Julian, the shippers, and Khloe herself. The day we went to get our marriage license, Khloe frowned through the entire process. In our official photo, she looked completely and utterly reluctant. "If you really don't want to, we don't have to do this," I had said, testing her. "We could just stage a wedding, put on a show. That could work too." She had sneered. "We're already doing it. What's the point of being wise after the fact?" From dating to marriage, she was like a reed in a flood, swept along inch by circumstances. I knew Khloe had never truly wanted any of it. It was just like how, when she was 15 and abandoned by her parents, it was my dad who fed her and paid for her schooling. She was with me, married me, to repay that debt. Maybe she had always resented me for holding her back, and that resentment extended to not wanting to see my dad one last time. But now that I was offering her a divorce, offering her the freedom she supposedly craved, why was she acting like she didn't understand? I said, "Let's get a divorce." "Ethan Vance, you're insane." She suddenly scooped me up in her arms. I was too surprised to break free. She carried me to the bedroom and threw me onto the bed. Just as I thought she was about to pull some dramatic, possessive movie scene, she just threw a blanket over me. "We're sleeping in separate rooms tonight. You need to calm down and think things over." With that, Khloe turned and walked out. This was her signature move, the cold shoulder. It always worked on me. Whenever my emotions ran high, Khloe would suddenly withdraw and refuse to communicate, leaving me feeling like I was punching a pillow. I was terrified of her coldness, so I would inevitably start to blame myself, tearing myself down until I finally gave in, begging for her approval like a dog. It was always the same pattern. But now, stepping back from the relationship, I could see it for what it truly was, a complete and total test of my submission. For all these years, I was never even worthy of having a genuine emotional exchange with her. Once I had figured that out, I texted my lawyer and forced myself to go to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, Khloe was already gone. It was usually like this. This place was as cold and impersonal as a hotel to her. Maybe I shouldn't have insisted on calling it a home. The lawyer who dropped off the divorce papers had just left when Khloe pushed the door open. She walked up quickly behind me and wrapped me in a hug from behind. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her warm breath ghosting across my neck. "I already went to see Dad, and I've taken care of the people who caused trouble yesterday. Don't be mad anymore, okay?" I turned to look at her, putting an arm between us to create some space and forcing a smile. "Is there anything else you want to say?" Khloe looked at me, confused. She rarely used her connections to help me out. This was one of the very few times I could remember. The entertainment industry is a tough place, especially for an actor like me who got a late start. I was used to being given a hard time and looked down upon. Whenever I mentioned it to her, Khloe would just give me a half smile and say mockingly, "Ethan, everyone goes through that." Then she'd pat my head. "Don't be discouraged, okay? I'll be waiting for you at the top." Over time, everyone in the industry knew that the great Khloe kept a clear and deliberate distance from Khloe. The people who judged you based on who you knew became more and more common. This time I clutched my phone and looked Khloe straight in the eye. "Don't tell me you don't know who was behind it." My phone was still open to the message from Mark. The trashing of my dad's funeral had ties to Julian Croft. I didn't know he hated me that much. He had covered his tracks well. There was no concrete evidence, but he had left just enough of a hint for me to know it was him. And until this very moment, Khloe was still covering for him. Her helping me out was really just her protecting him. Faced with the unspoken truth, Khloe's expression soured. I pushed her away. "Enough." I picked up the divorce papers from the table and threw them at her. "Khloe, I'm out." She picked the papers up off the floor. As she read through them, her face turned to ice. Khloe looked at me in disbelief. "Ethan Vance, stop being ridiculous. It's not what you think." I found it kind of funny. I watched her, waiting. "Then tell me, what is it?" "Without clear evidence, I can't just go around accusing my professional partner," she said impatiently, reaching for my hand. "If you're trying to use divorce to make me back down, Ethan, congratulations, it worked." She pulled me into a fierce hug, her voice laced with anger. "I'll cut back on my contact with him from now on. Are you satisfied?" I suddenly felt an overwhelming wave of sadness. So, all these years, she knew exactly what I wanted. She just never gave it to me. "Khloe, you're not thinking clearly right now," I said, pushing her away. "Let's separate for a while. You should really think about this." I threw her own words right back at her. As she watched me call a moving company, the anger on Khloe's face suddenly vanished. She leaned against the guest room doorframe, arms crossed, a look of absolute confidence on her face. "Ethan Vance, you've really grown a backbone," she scoffed. "If you walk out of this house today, don't ever come back." Then she spun around, went into the room, and slammed the door with a deafening crash. Even then, she was still so sure that I would never leave her. Khloe didn't take a single step out of that room, not even as I moved the last of my belongings out of the house. I moved into the apartment my dad had lived in. Traces of his life were everywhere, and it felt strangely comforting. To get me back on my feet, Mark managed to get me an audition for the supporting role in a film by a well-known director. I gave it everything I had and landed the part. Khloe never contacted me during this time. Surprisingly, I found that life without her was freer, more comfortable. Until one night, my phone suddenly rang. I groggily picked it up. Mark was on the other end, his voice hesitant. "Ethan?" "What's up? What happened?" I asked, rubbing my eyes. He was silent for a second. "Julian and Khloe were photographed going into a hotel late at night. X is completely down." My hand trembled, and the phone fell from my grasp onto the bed. Even though I had already decided to divorce Khloe, it still stung. I never saw this coming. You guys aren't even divorced yet. Those two, seriously, they have no shame. Mark was grinding his teeth, furious on my behalf. Don't drag this out. Use the public opinion to force a quick divorce. If that doesn't work, sue her. Mark hung up, and I tried to open the social media app. The page was just a blank gray screen with a reload button. After a while, I finally got in. The trending list was topped with Khloe cheats with Julian and my ship is real. There had been similar rumors before, claiming Khloe was cheating on me with Julian, but most of it was just speculation without any real proof. Both of their teams would always issue statements immediately, a well-oiled machine of denials and clarifications. So the shippers had always called them soulmates, two classy people who felt the love but were too moral to ever cross the line. But they couldn't help but get carried away, saying that they'd done everything but sleep together. This time I clicked the hashtag and saw a huge high-definition photo of Julian helping Khloe into a hotel. It was the kind of photo that's impossible to deny. The comment section was on fire, the shippers' celebration only enraged everyone else, and countless regular people jumped in to defend me. 8 years of a secret relationship, 2 years of marriage, all for this? When I thought about it, yeah, my life was pretty miserable. Both of their studios were strangely silent. Under the latest promotional post for their movie, the top comment was, "Why no denial? Is it because it's not a rumor?" My notifications were blowing up. The comment section had transformed from shippers' insults to messages of sympathy from fans and strangers. My heart breaks for him. Die, you cheating scumbags. I can't imagine what this guy has been through all these years. With that level of patience, you can succeed at anything. I used to hate on the shippers. How could you ship a married woman? Turns out they were shipping the real thing all along. My reputation was completely turned around overnight. Strangers rushed to my defense, and I gained tens of thousands of followers in a short time. But Khloe and Julian's fans were also trying desperately to control the narrative. Trust our girl. We all know Khloe's character. There has to be more to the story. Don't judge without knowing the full picture. Let's wait and see. LMAO at people calling our Julian the other man. Everyone knows Ethan is the homewrecker. He was probably already divorced, if you know what I mean. Ethan, stop playing dead and come out and say something. I almost wanted to laugh, but my lips wouldn't move. I couldn't manage a smile. We weren't even divorced yet, and my wife was already so eager to be seen with another man. After some thought, I sent Khloe a simple message. Courthouse, 8 a.m. After we divorce, I'll release a statement on social media to clear your name. At 8 a.m. the next morning, Khloe was there as promised. She took off her sunglasses, her face looking pale and drawn in the early sunlight. Ethan Vance, you're really dead set on this divorce, aren't you? I didn't know how she had the nerve to say that. I didn't answer her, just started walking towards the courthouse entrance. She grabbed my wrist, refusing to move. Last night was a misunderstanding. It's not what you think. I drank too much, and he just got me a room at the nearest hotel. That's all. Khloe's voice was impatient as she rushed through the explanation. I believe you, I said, stopping and turning around. I saw a surprising spark of hope ignite in her eyes. I forced a smirk. Go ahead and use that excuse in your official statement. See if your fans believe it. See if the public believes it. 2 a.m, a man and a woman, alone after drinking at a hotel. The time, the place, the people, the plot. It had all the elements of a perfect scandal. If Khloe dared to release that statement, her and Julian's careers would be over. She was speechless, choked by my words. We get divorced. I let you and Julian be the perfect couple you're meant to be, and I'll tell the media we had already agreed to separate a long time ago, but got delayed for various reasons. That way you and Julian aren't technically cheating. It's a win-win for you. What are you hesitating for?" I looked at Khloe, genuinely confused, and couldn't resist a taunt. "Or is it, Khloe, that you've actually fallen in love with me? You can't bear to let me go?" The words were barely out of my mouth before I wanted to laugh at myself, as if she had an ounce of genuine feeling for me. If she did, she wouldn't have let her shippers cyberbully me for years. She wouldn't have left me to be humiliated at my own dad's funeral, and she certainly wouldn't be going to hotels with another man before our divorce was even final. I looked at the person standing in front of me. I had to admit, I'd started falling for her long before that morning at the hospital 10 years ago. Back when we were teenagers, she was from a wealthy family, the top of her class. She was the kid next door my dad always compared me to, my natural-born rival. At the school sports meet during the 3,000-meter race, she was on the announcer's platform, reading messages of encouragement. I was gasping for air, about to give up, when I heard her clear, steady voice over the loudspeakers. Suddenly, I found the strength to keep going. If her mother hadn't had an affair, and her father hadn't walked out, if the Golden Girl hadn't become an orphan overnight, Khloe would have never given me a second glance. The day my dad invited her over for dinner after she hadn't eaten for 3 days, she finally noticed me. "You are?" she asked, trailing off. My surprise turned to shock. I stared for a moment, then sneered. "Are you blind?" I sat right in front of her. By then, we'd been in the same class for 3 years. I refused to believe I was that unnoticeable. I preferred to think she was just that arrogant. From then on, we couldn't stand each other. But it turns out, I might not have been a star, but I wasn't a nobody either. I had worked my way up to where I am today. I had won awards, gained fans, and earned praise from critics. I was shining my own little light in my own corner of the world. It's just that from then until now, Khloe had never once truly seen me. All this time, she'd never really looked at me. I had worked for 10 years just for that one look. 10 years later, I had to admit to myself that I shouldn't have been so desperate for it. Looking at her now, a nasty thought crossed my mind. If you kneel and beg me, I might consider not divorcing you. She was stunned. As she stood there frozen, I laughed again. Just kidding. You could kowtow to me 10 times and it wouldn't make a difference. She laughed, a furious, bitter sound. Ethan Vance, you were the one who begged me to date you, begged me to marry you. Don't you regret this? No regrets, I said, my voice firm. After we filed the papers, Khloe looked at me coldly. There's a 1-month cooling-off period. If you change your mind, you can cancel it at any time. I smiled. Whoever backs out is a dog. Seeing that I was resolute, Khloe turned and left in a huff, getting into her car with a stony expression. I just stood there on the courthouse steps for a long time. Suddenly, I felt like a chain that had bound me for 10 years had just vanished. The sun was so bright. I drafted a statement explaining that Khloe and I had planned to divorce a while ago, but had been delayed for various reasons, and that we had recently filed the paperwork. Then I posted it on my social media. Soon after, both of our studios released simple, vague clarifications, stating they were just friends. This move helped Khloe win back some public favor. Some people figured she wasn't technically cheating since our relationship was already over. Others still thought she and Julian were scum, who had definitely been hooking up for a while, and there was plenty of evidence to support that theory. I closed my social media apps, done with all the drama. I had done more than enough, but with Julian, I wasn't finished. No matter what, for disturbing a dead man's peace, he had crossed a line, and so would I. I just didn't expect to see Khloe again so soon. The movie I'd been cast in started filming shortly after. On the first day on set, I discovered that the original leads had been replaced by Khloe and Julian. I was speechless. A director of this caliber couldn't possibly afford two A-list actors like them. It was almost funny, the lengths they would go to just to mess with me. The rest of the cast and crew seemed to sense the weird vibe, too. Everyone was unusually quiet. Only the director and the investors were grinning from ear to ear. After all, the three of us and our tangled relationships were a walking headline. The movie was already generating massive buzz without a single bit of promotion. Mark's face was grim. How can they be such assholes? But at this point, it was too late to back out. It is what it is, I told him calmly. But seeing the two of them laughing and joking in front of me was still unsettling. Especially the way Khloe would sneak casual glances at me, and how Julian would size me up from time to time. The director said my scenes with Julian would be filmed later. By the time it was my turn, it was already late, and everyone was visibly exhausted. For this scene, my character had to go through several layers of complex emotion, and I had spent all night preparing. Facing Julian on set for the first time, he looked down at me with a condescending smile. "Mr. Vance, a pleasure to work with you." The shoot went smoothly at first. I could hear people around me praising my performance, and I couldn't help but smile a little to myself. Even opposite an award-winning superstar like Julian, I held my own and matched his energy perfectly. The director beamed and called, "Cut!" But just as he was about to move on to the next setup, Julian stopped him. Everyone was confused. He pointed at me. "I think Mr. Vance still has room for improvement in that last take. Wouldn't you all agree?" Julian blinked, his handsome face looking gentle and harmless. But no one on set dared to disagree with him. People exchanged nervous glances. I took a breath, forced a smile, and said, "Let's do it again then." So we did it again, and again, take after grueling take, over and over. By the time it was early morning, the crew was muttering complaints under their breath. The director finally spoke up, tentatively suggesting, "Maybe we should call it a day?" Julian strode over to the director and casually reviewed the footage on the monitor. After a few seconds of thought, he said, "I think my performance was best in the first take. Let's just use that one." And with that, he walked off. After the crowd dispersed, my assistant ran up to me, fuming. "He did that on purpose." Her lip trembled. "I'm so angry for you." While I was waiting for my car, I saw a familiar figure walking toward me. It was Khloe. She stood in front of me, her hands in her pockets, silent for a long moment. "What is it?" I asked. I knew Khloe had been in the crowd, just watching, while Julian was giving me a hard time. Without the filter of love, the thought that the person I had adored for 10 years was actually like this made me feel sick. She didn't say anything, so I turned to leave with my assistant. As I passed her, she suddenly grabbed my arm. "Ethan, I can get back at him for you," she said, pausing for effect. "All you have to do is give in." Before I could speak, my assistant, unable to stand it anymore, slapped her hand away. She sneered. "Khloe, you need to have some shame. I don't believe for a second you didn't have a hand in what happened today. Guess what? Once he was out from under your thumb, he realized it wasn't even raining." Khloe's face went pale, her lips pressed into a thin line as she stubbornly waited for my answer. I gathered my patience and told her, slowly and clearly, "Stay away from me. You make me sick." She staggered slightly, as if she couldn't believe those words came from my mouth. Finally, her lips trembled. "I'm sorry. I won't let him give you a hard time again." That's all I heard. The rest of her words were carried away by the wind. After that, Julian really did stop bothering me. Except for our scenes together, I stayed as far away from both of them as possible. A few times Khloe tried to talk to me, but I always managed to avoid her. Going from husband and wife to strangers wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. The day our divorce was finalized was also the last day of filming. At the wrap party that night, everyone was busy fawning over the two leads. After a few drinks, Khloe sat there restlessly, rubbing the rim of her glass, clearly impatient, especially when her gaze swept over to me. Julian was flushed, a little drunk. He reached out to grab her sleeve, his voice a little whiny. "Khloe, I'm drunk. Will you take me home?" She paused, her eyes instinctively flicking toward me. I was sitting in a corner, sipping my drink, not saying a word. I didn't even look in her direction. The entertainment industry is full of people who know which way the wind blows. Even with me, Khloe's ex-husband, in the room, it didn't stop them from sucking up to the two of them. One person, emboldened by alcohol, even blurted out, "Are we going to be hearing wedding bells soon?" My expression didn't change. But Khloe, apparently not getting the reaction she wanted from me, turned cold. She irritably shook off Julian's hand. "If you're drunk, call a car. I'm not your driver." The smiles on everyone's faces froze. The hazy look in Julian's eyes sharpened, and the color drained from his face. He was used to being the center of attention, coddled and adored. When had he ever been publicly humiliated like this? But because it was Khloe, he couldn't lash out. Tears welled in his eyes. Julian gritted his teeth, downed his drink in one gulp. "Excuse me?" He grabbed his bag and, ignoring everyone, turned to leave. I glanced at my watch. It was about time. As luck would have it, before he could even get out of sight, the door swung open, and a group of police officers walked in, flashing their badges. "Mr. Julian Croft, please come with us for questioning." It happened so fast. Everyone was stunned. Julian froze in place. The director knocked over a glass, which shattered with a loud crash. Someone stepped forward. "Is there some kind of mistake?" Of all the people there, the director looked the most horrified. The movie had just wrapped. It hadn't even been submitted for review yet. If his leading man became a criminal, he'd be ruined. He'd lose everything. No matter what anyone said or thought, after a few minutes of chaos, Julian was taken away. The wrap party ended in disarray. Walking out of the hotel, I felt great. I lit a cigarette, enjoying the cool night breeze. Khloe caught up to me from behind, looking like she wanted to say something, but she didn't say anything. She just took off her jacket and draped it over my shoulders. "Do you hate me?" I asked her. She didn't seem to understand. "What?" I stopped walking and tucked a stray strand of her hair behind her ear. "For wasting so many years of your life, or for being about to destroy your beloved. Do you hate me?" Khloe shook her head and opened her mouth as if to explain, but all she said was, "You should be the one who hates me. I'm so sorry for everything I put you through." I couldn't help but scoff. "At least you're self-aware." Looking at her lost, haunted eyes, I found it amusing. Smoke blew into my eyes, and they started to water. It stung. I coughed a couple of times. Khloe frantically tried to wipe my tears away and took the cigarette from my hand. I wiped my face and casually draped her jacket over her arm. "Let's go. Some things, like smoke in the wind, just disappear." Julian Croft was brought in on suspicion of inciting public disturbance. He wasn't some saint to have climbed so high in the entertainment industry. It wasn't just me. Other actors who had crossed him had all suffered at his hands in one way or another. He cultivated a harmless, innocent public persona, but behind the scenes, his methods were dirty. He even had a crew of people who did his dirty work for him. Trashing my dad's funeral was just one of many things. When you do enough bad things, no matter how well you clean up, you'll always leave a trace. I had someone gather all the evidence and secretly sent it to one of his old rivals, a washed-up actor whose face he had ruined, forcing him to quit the industry. As expected, the actor immediately reported him. He also bought a ton of press. With Julian's level of fame, the moment he was arrested, gossip bloggers jumped on the story, blowing it up. His studio issued a legal threat, promising to sue anyone spreading rumors, but they were immediately slapped in the face by an official police statement. Julian was a criminal. His reputation tanked overnight. Massive numbers of fans turned on him, and the shippers vanished into thin air. All sorts of scandals started popping up like weeds. Bullying in high school, skipping college classes for filming, being a diva on set, sabotaging his rivals with smear campaigns. Even the story of how he deliberately gave me a hard time on set was leaked by a crew member. I and several other victims became objects of public sympathy. Khloe, who always loved being associated with Julian for publicity, didn't fare much better. Her public image collapsed, with only her most die-hard fans sticking by her. Her new movie was a box office bomb, and as an investor, she lost a fortune. She was dropped by several luxury brands, her TV show appearances were canceled, and for the foreseeable future, she was uncastable. It just goes to show, those who live by public opinion will die by public opinion. My only loss was that the movie I made with Julian would probably never be released. Looking at the countless scripts Mark sent over, I picked a few good ones and gave him a call. After I finish these, I'm quitting. I'll have enough to retire, and I want to travel the world. Finally, I could live for myself again. Epilogue, Khloe's perspective. When I was a little girl, my dad used to tell me, "Khloe, you were born a princess. You'll get everything you ever want." And for a long time, he was right. In school, I barely had to try to get top grades. I inherited the best of my parents' looks, and I'd been getting love letters since I was a child. Over time, I really started to believe that I was special. Before I turned 15, I barely paid attention to anyone else in the world. My indifference and arrogance were seen as maturity by my teachers and aloofness by my classmates. They found all sorts of ways to attach beautiful words to my behavior. It was a strange existence, until one day the sky fell. That day, my mom brought home her lover's daughter. She was only a few months younger than me, ugly and bad at school, but she paraded in front of me with a malicious grin. "Sorry, your mom is my mom now." "Oh wait, she was always my mom. You don't have a mom." I told her she was full of shit. It was the first time I had ever cursed. But she was right. My mom really didn't want me anymore. I couldn't understand why she would choose that ugly, stupid girl over me. Later, my dad looked at my face and said, "You look just like your mother. It's disgusting." Then he left, and I never came back. My dad didn't want me either, even though they had always said I looked more like him, that I was beautiful like him. That year, at 15, I suddenly realized I was special. Specially miserable. That was the year I learned to pay attention to other people. The first person I noticed was Mr. Vance from the next building. "You poor kid," he said. "Come eat at my place." The second person I noticed was Mr. Vance's son, Ethan Vance. He was so rude. The first time we met, he called me blind. I hated him. I didn't understand why my world had been turned upside down. My teacher said, "Cat got your tongue, kid. Why don't you talk anymore? Being so quiet isn't good." My classmates said, "Her mom and dad both abandoned her. Look how gloomy she is every day. It's creepy." That's when that annoying Ethan Vance stepped in. "So what if she doesn't want to talk? Your obsession with other people's vocal cords is really weird. So what if she doesn't have parents? You have parents? If your parents raised you to be like this, you'd be better off without them." Suddenly, I thought maybe he wasn't so bad after all. But he got sent to the principal's office for insulting a teacher and his classmates. When he came out, he shot me a furious glare. My heart started pounding, but he seemed to hate me even more after that. Later, for a while, We were inseparable. We went to class, walked home, and ate dinner together. Sometimes I'd even help him with his homework. He became almost as important to me as my own hands and feet. After that, I can't really remember clearly. That was probably the most painful time of my life. I vaguely remember Ethan got a girlfriend. She was just as wild and chaotic as he was. He started skipping class, climbing over the school walls, and going to internet cafes. It gave his dad a huge headache. We didn't walk home together anymore. He didn't have time to stand up for me. While the teacher was yelling at me for my plummeting grades, he was passing notes to his girlfriend, asking what she wanted for lunch. While a group of girls cornered me in the bathroom and beat me up, he was at an internet cafe playing games with his girlfriend, the sound of his keyboard clattering away. I started to hate him. Why was he ignoring me? Why wasn't he protecting me anymore? I think he did try to check on me once, in a moment stolen from his romance. He asked about the bruises under my eyes. But by then, I had learned how to shut people up. "None of your business," I'd snapped. So we drifted apart. Until after graduation, he didn't get into college and insisted on following his girlfriend to the big city to try and make it. His dad said he was heartless, abandoning his old man for a girl. Ethan just laughed, and then he cried, saying that once he made it big, he'd bring both his dad and me over. He hugged me at the train station before he left. It felt so strange. Then he walked away without looking back. 2 months into my freshman year of college, I got a call from his dad. He told me Ethan's girlfriend couldn't take it anymore. A month ago, she had stolen his wallet and run off. He was too embarrassed to tell anyone, so he'd been struggling alone, penniless, for a month. When he couldn't take it anymore, he finally called his dad for help. That day, I took an overnight train to find him. He was filthy, like a homeless person. In that moment, I was furious. So angry my heart ached. I coldly yelled at him for being so pathetic, for letting some trashy person reduce him to this. He covered his face and cried, repeating my words. "I'm so pathetic." That night, I decided to drop out of college and build a life with him. The memories after that are a blur. His dad got cancer and was in the hospital. The bills were enormous. Ethan suddenly came to me and said, "There's this older woman. She said if I sleep with her, she'll pay for my dad's medical bills." I was speechless. I couldn't tell him no, but I couldn't tell him to do it either. In that moment, I hated something fiercely. Maybe I hated how powerless I was. But my anger twisted my words, and all that came out was a mocking, "You're so pathetic." He opened his mouth, then looked down and walked away. I shouldn't have said that. Later, I managed to earn the money for his dad's treatment. The look in Ethan's eyes that day was so bright, sparkling. He was kind of adorable. I swore to myself that I would make a lot of money. Then he said he wanted to date me, but he never said he loved me. Later, I became famous. The publicity stunts with a famous actor made me a lot of money. Ethan started to get jealous and bitter. He finally became like me, like I was during all those years of silent hysteria. I loved seeing him act like a madman. Even more, I loved it when, after a huge fight, he would have to come crawling back to me, his eyes wet and pleading like a little puppy. Only then could I feel that he loved me. He didn't know that I was the one who leaked our relationship to the press. Everyone online said he forced me into marriage, but I knew I was the one who did the forcing. When those shippers insulted him, it hurt me to see it, but when he turned to me, cornered and helpless, and threw himself into my arms, I felt an overwhelming thrill. So that's what it felt like. The roles from our youth had been completely reversed. I loved having this control over his emotions. I loved that he was pathetic, but only for me. I loved that he was surrounded by enemies, with only me to rely on. I especially loved the tears he cried when he was hurt, the ones that smelled of pain and helplessness. Day after day, year after year, but how did I lose him?